Welcome to all the participants and the attendees at the final conference of SoPHIA project. As you know, this is a hybrid conference, so I welcome the participants in presence, that are many, and the participants online. So I am Michela Marchiori, and I am very, very glad to introduce this final conference. After a period of intense work, we reach the end of the project. 2 years for the realization of a European project are a very short period. Therefore, I really appreciated the contribution that the partners of the consortium have provided for the implementation of the project. Also, I know that many of you already know them. I am pleased to introduce a member of our consortium to the new participant of this conference. Sorry, because I have to open my presentation. Our consortium is made up by 7 partners who belong to units located in different countries here in Europe, as you can see in this picture. We have a very interesting and special consortium in which we tried to blend and to merge different and complementing competencies and expertise. Indeed, multidisciplinary skills were necessary to address the impact assessment issue according to an holistic and multidimensional approach that the European Commission asked from us. In our consortium, we have 3 universities and 4 research institutes. First of all, the member of the Roma Tre team that in which we held this conference, that are all professors and researchers in management and urban and architectural studies. We are Michela Marchiori, Annalisa Cicerchia, Paola De Martini, Lucia Marcheggiani, Flavia Marucci, Mauro Baioni e Giovanni Caudo. InterArts is a not-for-profit foundation in Spain with international projects on the field of cultural sector all around the world. They define themselves as a laboratory of ideas and a center for advocating for a major role of culture in European governance. And after 2 years of work with them, I can assure that they just do that in a very effective way. Mercedes Giovinazzo, Antonio Guicciardo, Alberto Cerezo are in the team of the researcher that joined us, but also Valerie Wertz and Viviana Pebon participated to our SoPHIA project. EMA is a European Museum Academy, is a voluntary society of museum experts from different national and cultural backgrounds that promote the advancement of knowledge of museum in international level. SoPHIA project has largely made use of the important network in which EMA is involved, such as the Pascal Learning Cities project coordinated by one of our ABBI member, Rob Mark, or Nemo. Eric Zipson is the management director of EMA. Elia Vlachu, Eme Kilmats are part of the team of research. EduCult is an independent European research institute in the field of culture and education located in Austria. Their work is guided by the belief that arts and culture are an essential driving force for social development process. They pursue this goal with an excellent competence in social science research. Aaron Wade, Angela Wieser, and Rida Arif are part of the team that collaborated in the consortium. NTUA, the National Technical University of Athens, known as Athens Polytechnic, is among the oldest higher education institutions of Greece. It is a polytechnic, so it is the home of both engineering and architecture department. The colleagues that form the extraordinary NTUA team are all architects, and they are Nicholas Anastasopoulos, Riva Rava, Leonidas Koutsopoulos, Marianti Papangelopoulos, Arikleia Hari. IADT, the Institute of Art, Design and Technology, is based in Dublin and is one of the 13 publicly funded institutes of technology in Ireland. Padraig McQuaid and Christine Horn are lecturer and expert in Cultural Enterprise Program and Cultural Policy in BA courses. Tiziana Soverini is a researcher that belongs to this team. Last but not least, we have IRMO, Institute for Development International Relations in Croatia. Is a public, no-profit research institute focused on various forms of interconnections between international relations and political, economic, and social cultural development tendencies. Most of the IRMO research programs are characterized by interdisciplinary and research flexibility. Sandra Tisma is a director, Alexandra Uzelak, Daniela Lincic, Sunkana Franik, Barbara Lovrinic belong to the team. As you know, SoPHIA project is a social platform. Therefore, the expertise did not come only from the member of the consortium, but we had constantly benefited from the available support of our 9 AB members on the entire stakeholder community who interact with us on all the main output of the project. And now I am going to give you some general information about our project, about its background and its main result. Obviously, this is only a short illustration, waiting to discuss it in depth tomorrow with our speaker and with our distinguished guests. The starting point of our project is an Horizon 2020 call starting in 2019. As you can see, the call was for a social platform on the impact assessment. Some relevant consideration on that. The first is that the European Union is looking for a new approach in assessing cultural heritage intervention. Secondly, the European Commission strongly believes in the assessment as a means to ensure the quality of the intervention. The third is that the social platform is the core of the call because engagement of the community plays a crucial role and collaborative approach is a relevant and a fundamental aspect of the new European cultural policies framework. Then our proposal has some challenges goals. The first was to create an holistic and multidimensional impact assessment model. We will deepen this concept tomorrow, but now I can anticipate that we elaborate a model be able to detect the impact produced in a lot of areas, not in one single domain. A model able to engage in the evaluation process people who benefit from the intervention but are interested in its outcomes. And last, a model that could be used in different times of the intervention, ex ante, during the intervention, and ex post. The second aim is to create a platform to gather opinion from a community of stakeholders through a new social platform. This is a very, very important point to stress. When we are talking about social platform, we don't mean a social digital platform. We are talking rather about a community of practice. By that, we mean a group of people that come together because they have a shared interest and a shared aim. And they want to work together. To speak to a community of practice, it means that they also provider of knowledge and also learners of knowledge. And SoPHIA has applied this concept of community of practice, bring together a group of people like those who participate today in our conference. And this group discussed together, interacting, in order to reach the outcome of the project. These communities is the most important legacy we would like to leave for the future, because we hope that this community could work again together, perhaps engaging new persons and new stakeholders. The third goal is try to convey a consensus toward the future European action plan. And this is a very relevant point. In fact, we are expected to create a new approach in assessing the intervention. And we create a new model for assessing the intervention. But the model could be implemented. In order to implement this model, we need the help of the European Commission and cultural institutions to invest in policies and operational programs useful for give legs for our project. And then what we have produced so far. This is a life cycle of SoPHIA project. I hope that the slide will show how many things we have done since January 2020, sorry, when we started our project. And as you can see, everything is quite squeezed, and this is exactly how we worked, because we made many things in a very short time, and the pandemic made more complicated our work. We learn how to bring people together, how to build a community without being together in person. In the middle of this slide, we have the case studies analysis. This is our stone, our building point of our process. The case analysis boosted our process and led us to revise and define our model using the participatory way I referred before. And now, the main output of produced by SoPHIA, the main output produced by SoPHIA project. We are going to discuss this output tomorrow, but we can have a look to the main output. Of course, we are going to produce many reports, reports in which we explain the background of SoPHIA, only for citing the some of this report, the report in which explains the model, the SoPHIA model that is visualized in this slide, and the report with a toolkit, the instrument that we hope will be useful for practitioner and evaluator in order to assessing all kind of cultural heritage intervention. Then we leave a digital platform. A digital platform then we hope we can use to spread the voice, to disseminate the result of our SoPHIA project. And last but not least, as I said, 4 policy briefs that contain the main recommendation in order to the need in cultural policy in implementing, necessary to implementing our SoPHIA model, and a research agenda that explain the main need for future research direction. And now we finally arrived to the today conference. We decided to open our conference by trying to make our project in dialogue with a great team of climate change and how the cultural sector and cultural heritage are fundamental to achieve the goal of setting a limit to climate heating. To discuss this issue, we invited 2 important keynote speakers, Erminia Sciacchitano and Alessandro Rancati. And I would like to thank them for their participation and their valuable contribution. Erminia Sciacchitano is one of the SoPHIA Advisory Board members. She is currently working in the cabinet of the Italian Minister of Culture, and she already has been in the European DG dealing with cultural policies and promoting important initiatives like the European Year of Cultural Heritage 2018. In November 2021, Erminia followed the work of the 26th United Nations Climate Change Conference in Glasgow, in particular by participating in the events in which it has been discussed the role of cultural policies and programs in addressing climate action. It will be very interesting for us to hear the themes that emerged from this initiative by Erminia, who has been a direct participant and a speaker of this initiative. Alessandro Rancati, that follow our work online, will talk to us about the European initiative New Bauhaus, an interdisciplinary movement promoted in 2020 by the European Commission with the aim of rethinking all spaces design, not only urban, in a sustainable perspective, in order to contrast global warming and to make our lifestyle more sustainable. Alessandro is an architect and designer who works at the Joint Research Center of the European Commission and is now in charge of the development of the new European Bauhaus project. I would like to remind that the 3 partners of the SoPHIA project, Roma Tre, IADT and NTUA, are official partners of the new European Bauhaus initiative. It will be very interesting for us to explore with Alessandro possible collaboration between SoPHIA project and new European Bauhaus. Finally, I would like to thank very much our colleague, Nicola and Pareik, who are going to moderate the discussion with our important keynote speaker, and our Giovanni Caudo then conclude our first day of this conference. I am very happy and glad to be here. I hope you can enjoy with our two-day conference, and what is really important for us, I want to invite you to contribute with your comments and your valuable suggestions. Thank you very much for being so numerous with us. And now I leave the floor to Flavia Marucci that will give some detail on the organization of this conference and of the social event we are going to live together. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay. Sì, vai.
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for being here. My name is Flavia Marucci, and I'm the person behind the SoPHIA.h2020 email address. You probably had a lot of emails from my address in the last days. It's very nice to see you all here today. And before jumping into the conference, I'm gonna give you just some information and organizational details on our conference, and explain you a little bit about the organization of these 2 days together. As Michela explained very well in her presentation, we are going to have a 2-day conference, and today in particular, after finishing our keynote speech and discussion sessions, we are going to get a transfer from here, from our department, from where we are having the first day of the conference, and get to the first of the social events that we are going to have in these 2 days. First of all, I'm going to give you a spoiler. We are going to go on one of the most well-known panoramic sites of Rome to see the city center from a terrace known as Giorno1. Probably some of you that have been already here in Rome have been there already, but we thought that it was a nice way to show you the city a little bit after the first day of the conference. And then we are going to go to a restaurant to have our first social dinner together and catch up a little bit after so many months apart. Then, thank you. There is also a presentation now. As for the second day, we organized a pickup from the hotel to get you to the Department of Law. That is going to be where our conference is going to be held tomorrow. The pickup is going to be at 8:30, and we're going to start the works at 9 at the University of the School of Law. Sorry. After our first session, we're going to have a coffee break at the university, and then we're going to have a light lunch at 1 p.m. on a restaurant on the other side of the street from our campus. After that, we are going back to the department to have our last roundtable session. And then after the closing remarks, we are going to organize a cultural tour in a very special location, which is the Centrale Monte Martini. Centrale Monte Martini is a special museum for us. It's in the Diocese district, which is the district we are right now, and it's a very interesting example of industrial archaeology and urban regeneration. Thank you. Oh, sorry. As I was saying, it's an example of industrial archaeology and urban regeneration. In fact, it used to be a hydrological plant, and after being dismissed for almost 30 years, is now a museum that hosts an exhibition of archaeological piece of arts and sculptures from ancient Greece and ancient Roman. I don't want to give you much of a spoiler. There's going to be a guide explaining everything to us during our cultural visit. But I just wanted to let you know that we chose this place because it has it's very important for our district because it helped in the regeneration process. And we thought it was a nice way to, in a way, finalize our conference and our project by sharing this cultural event together. After that, we are going to have our last social dinner together and salute the end of the project. Once again, I wanted to thank you all for being here. This is a very difficult time to travel, and I know that you have been struggling a lot to get here. So we really appreciate your presence here even more. And we also wanted to thank all the people that are joining us online. And I'm sorry if I bothered you with these organizational details. But we really appreciate that after 2 years of being constantly online and following meetings and conferences online, you still wanted to participate in one of them. So once again, thank you very much for joining us, and we really hope you will appreciate our conference together. Thank you.
The first presentation, and I would like to invite Erminia to sit with us. Come. And of course, also Nikos.
Fine if I take it off, because if I understand well, the audio is also important for the people who's following, the friends who are following us online. So, thanks. I'm starting, or you was a moderator, you're official moderator. So.
Thank you, Erminia. I was supposed to introduce you, but I think that Michela has already done an excellent job, so I shouldn't really take any more time. I will just try to moderate by taking questions from the audience and you know, that sort of thing. So the floor is yours.
Okay. So prepare for questions and be kind. Thanks. I'm really honored for the invitation to participate here at this is important meeting where you are finally summing up all the results and achievement of the SoPHIA project, and also honored to be in the advisory board of the SoPHIA project. I'm a pride member, and have been assigned by Michela. I have to say, where is Michela? I've been assigned a very ambitious mandate, so to open a first round of discussion on new scenarios for cultural heritage, and it is really challenging. It was a really challenging task also to identify the topic, because you have been working on an holistic approach to cultural heritage, to the impacts on cultural heritage, and then okay, what can be even more complex, and then of course the climate crisis came to our mind, because it's really, I think that maybe there is nothing more complex than the climate crisis that we are living. So we all remember 2020. I think we will remember for all our lives as the year of change, but this was change that happened really. It was a real disruptive change that changed our life, affected our lives in a monumental proportion, and also the project, the SoPHIA project. We have also seen increasingly change created by climate events, damaging homes, affecting livelihoods. Only a few weeks ago, we have the south of Italy has been severely battered by fierce storms, turning streets into rivers and squares into lakes. And just a few days ago, we have seen another unprecedented storm in Minnesota, again claiming lives. So I think maybe we should also remember those who have lost their life in these dramatic events. These events are increasing every day. But it's also true that 2021 has been an incredible year, which has opened new perspective and new ways to address those complex aspects. And I think in this sense, it was a perfect year for you to work on this holistic approach. One important achievement is the work that has been done in the framework of the G20. On July 2021, the culture ministers of the 20 world's largest economies, including the European Union, and the high representatives of the key international cultural organizations met for the first time, the very first time in Rome, under the Italian presidency of the G20 and under the motto "Culture Unites the World." And the result is an historic document, the Rome Declaration of the G20 Culture Ministers, which is a joint call to better integrate culture into national economies, to better use culture for sustainable and balanced growth, and to coordinate our responses to climate change, to armed conflicts, and to illegal trafficking of cultural property. And a few months later, culture has been even included in the leaders' final declaration of the leaders of the G20. This is really another unprecedented event. In the framework of the discussion took place in the framework of the G20 Culture Ministers meeting, has also included this topic of the relations between culture and climate action. And why? Because cultural heritage and cultural diversity are increasingly put at risk by climate change all over the world. To explain that this is an important loss in terms of cultural assets, cultural activities, and this is depriving local communities of precious sources of meaning, identity, knowledge, resilience, and economic benefits. But it was also important, this opportunity was also important to stress that culture offers solutions to the climate crisis, and that the intangible and tangible cultural heritage, culture, and creativity, which testify the experience and wisdom of people, of local communities, of indigenous people, and in particular, it's interesting, it was stressed in the framework of the G20 of the local women. I'm proud to say that. They who have adapted to climate change in the past, and those solutions are solutions that we cannot still use today. We need to recognize those solutions as a precious gift for mankind. And also the fact that the culture can play an important role in changing the behaviors, which are at the basis of the climate crisis, towards a more sustainable production and consumption models for the benefits of everyone's quality of life. This is clear in the many examples of artists, of culture and heritage professionals, museums, cultural institutions which are engaged to raise the public awareness on the importance to respect our planet and our environment. And the G20 ministers also highlighted the need to better exploit culture-based solutions for climate action and sustainable development, and also committed to scale up cultural dimensions into climate change policies and to mainstream culture and consideration into global climate agenda. So there was a very important call to use the opportunity of the COP26 in Glasgow. It was really going to happen soon in Glasgow to stress all those elements. And so in Glasgow, this happened, and there have been a series of events, discussions, conferences, exchanges, and which has been unprecedented. More, let's say, 15 events organized by the Climate Heritage Network, for instance, several events which have been organized in the framework of the pre-COP, the preparatory meeting. I just added here in the slide a few examples, but I really assure that these were much more, and I think it's the first time. Museums, and contribution to sustainable development goals. A lot of emphasis on the young generation, because in the pre-COP in Milan was very much dedicated to highlighting the role that the young generation play for climate action. And important discussion also at the COP26. I was honored to be there. I like two important meetings. One meeting was dedicated to relaunch the call for the parties of the Paris Agreement to include the culture into their adaptation communication. This is a very important and strong tool that we have. A few countries have done this until now. Italy is proud to have included culture and cultural heritage into its adaptation strategy and plan, but really the countries should be more proactive in this direction. Another important event took place in the EU pavilion, where we have pooled forces with several other organizations highlighting so many activities and especially research funded by the EU on cultural heritage and climate change. And to achieve urban sustainability and to contribute to the goals of the Paris Agreement, there is need to mobilize many stakeholders involved in decision-making at all levels with diverse expertise. But likely there's been a lot of important work done by ICOMOS, which has produced, for instance, in 2019, this important report, The Future of Our Past, for the first time mapping the relationship between climate action and cultural heritage. The first global network, the Climate Heritage Network, gathering more than 200 organizations which are mobilized for climate action. The European Cultural Heritage Green Paper, which I've seen you very often make reference to this very important document. And only a few days ago, the very first co-sponsored UNESCO IPCC ICOMOS meeting on cultural heritage and climate change. And this is another milestone, because for the first time IPCC is considering and it's considering this topic into the discussion. And you know that IPCC is the one who prepares all the documents, all the evidence for the climate policy. And another important, that's one emphasis that I want to give in this occasion, is to present you the important manifesto, Accelerating Climate Action Through the Power of Arts, Culture and Heritage, which I invite you to read and sign. The manifesto declares that the people, their cultures, and the natural and cultural heritage on Earth are profoundly at risk for human-caused climate change and the climate inaction that is deepening the unfolding climate crisis, but also reaffirms the immense power of arts, culture, and heritage to inspire climate action and enable a just and transition to low-carbon, climate-resilient future. Because culture anchors people to places and to each other. It can create cohesion in ways that enable community building and collective action. Artists and cultural voices, as we say, drive public awareness and action, and their work can be a powerful tool for climate mobilization. Other examples in the manifesto that you can see, for instance, archaeological records. They illustrate the causes to an adaptation to past changes by communities. This is actually not considered in the climate discourse and needs to be highlighted. But it's also true that the talents of the arts, culture and heritage actors have not been mobilized for climate action. And so it's urgent to shift this paradigm and lock this potential to achieve the ambitions of the Paris Agreement. And this includes crucial transformation within the cultural sector too, embracing sustainable practices and stewardships. It's time to act. And like Greta Thunberg says, we are never too small to make the difference. I'm closing with an example. There are so many. I attended just a couple of months ago in Venice in the magnificent Church of Redentore. At the premiere of the Floating Autumn, it is a part of a project called The Uncertain Four Seasons. This concert was played by the European Union Youth Orchestra, and they gave us a concrete demonstration of how culture can mobilize collective action to reverse biodiversity by 2020, by biodiversity loss. What is this project? Composers, musicians, climate and computer scientists work together, recomposing Vivaldi's Four Seasons through an algorithm that incorporates the latest climate modeling for predicted changes in rainfall, biodiversity, and extreme weather events in 2015, as laid out in the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change reports. And the result, the music which resulted, is a distortion of the landscape that Vivaldi displayed in 1725. And in some variations, well, for instance, the birds have fallen silent, or the storms are more intense, or rivers are ceased flowing. The full series of concerts playing the recomposition of Vivaldi's Four Seasons was performed during COP26 and during the Youth and Public Empowerment Day, where 14 orchestras around the world, half of which youth orchestras, created a unique online experience to communicate an urgent message. If we do nothing now, the harmonious environment we rely on for inspiration and nourishment will be forever changed. So let me close saying, and also recalling again Vivaldi, in the contest between harmony and invention, the search for quality, environmental quality, social quality, cultural quality should be the ultimate goal of innovation. Thanks to the European Year of Cultural Heritage, we know how to manage this complexity. Thanks to the work that we have done, we have a model and a tool. 2021 has been the year of disruptive change, and now we can make change happen by design. It's a real revolution. Thanks. Happy to listen to your questions.
Erminia, thank you so much for this really enlightening presentation that you gave us as a keynote speech and as an introduction to this conference, which is the closing event for the SoPHIA project. I will have the role to moderate a discussion among our participants and the audience. We have about 25 minutes to do that, and I will just start by saying a few words about the role that we had, which was in a sense related to what you presented us. We were charged with the task to produce a policy brief that addresses cultural heritage, and its title was Transformational Strategies, Sustainability, Resilience, and Green Management. Now, this policy brief was being written at the time that in Europe we experienced unprecedented like the floods in Germany and Belgium, as well as the bushfires that took place in my own country, Greece, and other parts. And so it was obvious to us that climate change is of paramount importance to address, and not only because it's critical for humanity's survival and for the planet at large, but also because many important cultural heritage sites were at risk because of both floods and fires. So we embarked on a journey or a research that tried to analyze how different policies were evolving through time, both in cultural heritage and in the environmental sector. To our surprise, we realized that until recently, there were hardly any connections between the two. So this brings us back to the effort that the SoPHIA impact assessment model proposes, which uses the word holistic. And I think this is a key word to hold, because holistic means that for any topic that you address, you need to look at it from different points of view and not compartmentalize it as we usually do in Western cultures, Western civilization. I was very thankful for your introduction of the manifesto that came out from COP26 about accelerating action, climate action through the power of arts, culture, and heritage. And in the second page, I highlighted two terms that seem to resonate in my point of view, but this is a topic of discussion as well. It's the terms indigenous knowledge and endogenous technologies. The second one was new to me. I was familiar with indigenous knowledge, and I understand it as the collective wisdom that has been accumulated over time in different parts of the world. And endogenous technologies, as I understand it from the description in the manifesto, is again the local way of addressing problems that societies and communities have. In our work, we found that the only way to address these crises that we are faced with, which seem to be coming the one after the other, it's not just COVID-19. Before that, we had other crises, and I'm afraid there may be more coming. So I have a question which is addressed to you, but also to the audience, or perhaps two. The first one is, how can we further articulate the interconnections between cultural heritage and the environment in ways that are beneficial to both? And the other is, how can various member states and other regions of the world incorporate this holistic approach that SoPHIA encompasses? This is, again, as I said, because I think that for the first question, holistic is the key word that we need to look for in order to understand, begin to better understand the interconnections between cultural heritage and the environment. For us, as we were doing this kind of research, it became clear that the environment is also cultural heritage, because it's we live in the Anthropocene, and the environment is part of our heritage, and vice versa. Cultural heritage is embedded in the environment, therefore, we need to look at them holistically. And the second question refers to these remarks from the manifesto, which address indigenous knowledge and endogenous technologies. And I would like to invite those of you that are interested in commenting on that, how you understand these terms in terms of the cultures you represent and the countries you represent, because I have a feeling that cultural heritage is so vast and so different from one region to the other that we really need to localize this kind of understanding. I could go on and talk about other things that are relevant, but I would rather not. I would rather pass the floor, first of all to you, and second to our audience that might want to comment on these topics.
Thanks, really interesting comments, and we really, I think you have nailed, you have found the key, the important aspect. Why we haven't been, we see something, we see clearly how much climate and culture and heritage are interrelated. We see it, we see the picture, it's in front of us. They don't see it. They have no idea. I was shocked I was shocked, especially at the COP26. It seems something that it's really on the side. But this is, let me say frankly, it's our fault. And it's a matter of language, and it's exactly what you have spotted. It's a matter of language. We don't speak their language. What we call traditional indigenous knowledge, for instance, it is called in another way in the Paris Agreement. And this is why we have the action has been accelerated enormously with the e-commerce report of 2019, because in this occasion, the idea was to reverse the approach, not to claim, hey, we are important, but to say how we can contribute and using this language to open the door of the climate scientists. Of course, with the help of the researchers who have been working on this for many years. There is a huge bulk of research in the EU funded on climate change and cultural heritage, so they helped. So the idea was to produce a document mapping, looking at the Paris Agreement and seeing what culture has to do with the Paris Agreement. It's completely the reverse of what we do usually. Usually you look at ourselves and see how much we should be considered, and we claim, we say, please, hello, look at us. It never happens. And it was really an interesting experience, because this is how you cross the paths. You need to contaminate. You need some hybridization between the languages and the knowledges of the different expertise, and that's what we are doing with the holistic approach, exactly. But this is how you do it in practice. You can't really have an holistic approach if you don't contaminate the diverse professions or languages, no? The example of the bushes, the bushfires is perfect, and I was really, the experience of the G20 to me, it was really eye-opening, especially in these, in the better understanding of the importance of local and indigenous knowledge for climate action. I just bring you one very concrete example. In Australia, and we have invited this person at a preparatory webinar for the G20 on climate change and cultural heritage. This woman is called Ari Goring, and she is using the knowledge of the indigenous people in doing these kind of small bushfires that prevent fire to spread. This is something that in their tradition has always been done. And now you know that Australia has been devastated by fire. And they use the local knowledge to prevent this to happen, especially in a situation that we are facing of a climate that in this region is drying. So it's even more, it's happening even more frequently, this event. So this was a very concrete and very solid example. connecting to the Paris Agreement, where indigenous knowledge it is included in the wording, and it's the only way, only door to include culture in this context. That's also interesting. You also said many. Also, it was really interesting to your question regarding the tools, what the regions and the local and the national authorities can do, and also what we can do, because we have tools. There are tools, for instance, to manage risks, which have been created under the Sendai framework for disaster risk management. For instance, this is I discovered all this sphere of action, huge sphere of action. For instance, the civil protection works under this framework, and which we as heritage professionals or cultural professionals ignore totally. So I've learned how much is important to be into this discussion, and how much is important to include cultural dimension in this framework. And the same is for the adaptation planning and strategy. There is an important stream of work also promoted at EU level, asking the countries to produce strategies for climate adaptation. Climate adaptation means what we have to do because climate has already changed and is inevitable. So we need to adapt. We can, of course, fight to reach the objective of the goal of the 1.5 degrees, but sadly some changes is happening. So we have to adapt. And there are tools. There is people working at these tools, and we are not there. And what happened in some countries, well, like in Italy or for instance in Ireland, some countries, I spoke with the colleagues in the ministry which have produced a strategy for climate adaptation with the cultural dimension. And they simply say, we just said, hello, we want to do it. The door is open, you can do it. It's simply, we don't embark in the discussion into another policy field. And I think now it's time to do it.
Thank you very much, Erminia. I neglected to say earlier that we have an audience in the conference room that we are in right now, but there are people participating from our platform on Teams. So if someone would want to comment or ask a question from the platform, they could raise their hand, and the same, I guess, can apply for people in this room as well. So it's either a physical hand or a digital one. Be prepared. I suppose we can have at least, we have almost 10 minutes more left for discussion. Anyone that might want to comment or ask a question, feel free. But as we are preparing your thoughts, I would just like to say that I would just like to read the recommendations that we came up with in our policy brief only as titles, so that perhaps you may be inspired or may have some additional questions or comments to make. We thought that cultural heritage and the environment should be treated as inextricably linked. We believe in recursive adjustment as a recommendation. We need to act locally. Cultural heritage and environmental policies need to hit home. We need to educate so as to safeguard, track, monitor, evaluate, and share, allocate funding for ongoing environmental and cultural heritage research, policy making, and implementation, all these linked together. And finally, empower and safeguard human rights in relation to cultural heritage and the environment. I don't know if you have any comments or ideas about these. Meanwhile, anyone, as I said, can...
Yes, I have many, but it's good if someone wants.
Oh, that's right. Okay. So I see... I do not see the hands here, but I can only see them if I turn my head. So...
I don't know whether you can see my hand. I cannot use the tool on the software, but I can show you my hand.
Somewhere here, you mean? I can see. All right. Okay. All right. So I think then we have. I'm sorry. Who's this? Joseph Caudo, I think would like to. Joseph, the floor is yours, and then Athena Guma as well.
Thank you. I very much appreciated what Erminia said, and particularly what she had to say about the disjuncture between what we as culture specialists and academics have to say and what people in another sector quite different in climate science. This reminds me very much of problems that I faced at the OECD for many, many years in dealing with urban issues, particularly the problems of disparities and exclusion. Academics don't talk the same language as policy people. And I found out they don't want to learn how to make their knowledge accessible. There isn't sufficient rewards for them to do that. And so over time, we stopped simply inviting academics to come to OECD meetings because there was really no dialogue. The other problem that we faced was the problem of English when the same word doesn't mean the same thing in different contexts. Suburb, for example, means one thing in American English, another thing in British English, quite something else when it's used by an Austrian or a Frenchman. And much better to have people actually speak their own languages and have a very good interpreter handle the exchanges. We found at the OECD, and this was in the Environment Directorate, that people were simply talking quite past each other, not recognizing that they were dealing with similar problems, but in very different locations or contexts. The language is important, and we have to recognize that speaking in different languages may actually help us than trying to say everything in one single language. That's what I wanted to say. I'll talk more tomorrow, for sure.
A very quick comment on this. That's why you need to work together, the diverse specialists. One example, we have convinced, let's say, we made a case at the G20 culture, especially about the inclusion in the Leaders' Declaration, thanks to the fact that OECD worked with us and produced a very good paper demonstrating and summing up what is the contribution of culture and cultural heritage to the economy and the society. And it was written in the language that they understand. Mm. And so we got that inclusion. So we really need to work together.
Right. Let me add one thing then about the OECD. I led work on culture and employment back around 1996. It had never been done before, and the people who have worked on culture since probably don't know about the paper that I pioneered nearly 30 years ago. And in the meantime, nothing much was done on culture, as far as I know. Partly because it's a reserved regalian right in many countries, and therefore culture, defense, and justice are not normally topics dealt with in the OECD at all. Okay.
Thank you so much, Joseph. I do agree that the meanings of words can be completely different from one culture to the other, and that's why localizing these efforts is crucial. And tomorrow morning, in the presentation of the SoPHIA impact assessment model, we'll be able to see whether we have succeeded in making an impact assessment model inclusive enough to be able to be taken up by different cases, different localities, and different issues. I think there is another hand raised digitally by Athena Guma. So Athena, if you want to take, the floor is yours for your comment or question.
Well, my comment, it's more of a comment rather than a question. We are currently, I represent the University of Cyprus and the Center for Natural and Cultural Heritage. We are currently trying to put together a proposal for the Horizon upcoming calls, which includes effects on climate change on heritage. And what strikes me very much during this conference and during the call is that we talk about the environment and that we should consider the environment as heritage, but this is already in the terminology existing in heritage, because we have natural heritage as since the UNESCO document in the 1970s. Natural heritage is very well established, and landscapes. So when it comes to actions of reforestation after bushfires, for example, it shouldn't be a matter of we need to replant, but we need to reconstruct our heritage. And I think this also built into what Joseph was saying, in the language has to change. And we perhaps from our side could start be using the words natural heritage to incorporate initiatives like green initiatives that aren't directly related to sites or monuments or objects of cultural value, but are purely natural. So this is what I wanted to say. I hope my comment was useful to you. And thank you very much for giving me the floor.
Thank you, Athena. It's indeed, we can differentiate natural heritage from cultural heritage to some degree, but there's definitely a space where they overlap, and this is what we refer to as landscape. The Florence Convention on landscape actually addresses that. It's a long discussion, and we see two hands raised from the audience here.
Oh, okay. Should I repeat this very quickly or? Very quickly. Okay, I was just saying how interesting it was to bridge these two languages and these two worlds, as Erminia Sciacchitano said, saying bicultural quality should be the task of innovation. So I see at least three ways to do this: through heritage and through culture. The one is to use it as a mediator, as a way to put universal values and to picture it like the 4 seasons we saw as an example. The other way is to really draw from our arsenal of traditions and heritages and say, this is a simple solution. You can build like this. You can take care of the fires like that. We have this already in our history. We have it ready as a way, as engineers, as cultural engineers, to put it like that. And the third thing I wanted to comment is when we were working our case study in Santorini, most of our stakeholders were surprised, pleasantly surprised, when we said it very formally that human happiness, which is a reflection of cultural quality, is an objective. We can work towards that end. We have the right to do this, and culture is the way to do it.
Thank you.
Sorry for repeating myself.
Thank you. I'll give the Can we collect another comment from Rob Mark?
Okay, thank you.
Use this as a mic, yes.
Thanks, Flavia. Well, my name is Rob Mark, and I'm here representing Pascal project, the Learning Cities project. My background is as an educator of young people, children, adults, you name it, university people. And my point is really to do with education. I don't have any problem in linking cultural heritage and climate change, but I think that this idea is not fully understood, not only by every people on the ground, but by the educators and the people that do that job of transmitting, you know, the messages. And I think that there are probably many that have an understanding of it, but they need to think through more how to change what they're doing, the actions, whether it's working in museums or whether it's working in adult education centres or community learning or whatever. And I just wonder whether we're putting enough emphasis on how to educate people to do the task that we think that we would like them to do. I think this project has been very excellent in highlighting all the areas and policies and things that need to be done, but it's making that next stage to getting people to make changes on the ground is going to be important. It's just a comment, I think, but anyone's welcome to make a response. Thank you very much.
Work more proactively, should be empowered to be to play this role as well, but maybe we also need competencies and skills that we don't have yet. So this is a role for these places, exactly.
Erminia, thank you very much. We are very, very sorry for the bad functioning of this microphone, and sorry. And I am sorry too for the delay in which we give the word to Alessandro Rancati. Alessandro, are you with us? Please.
Yes.
Thank you.
I am online.
Okay, I see you. Good evening. Thank you for your participation. Here is Parik McQuay from IADT. He is our discussor. And please, moderator, not discussor, sorry. Okay, please, break, okay. We hope that now, but I think that many of the previous questions, of course, refers to this, also to this session. So we can also, Alessandro can replay for some of the questions.
I was thinking the same thing, actually, Michela. But in relation to especially the last question around the how do we fix that policy conundrum, I think the new European Bauhaus seems to offer some form of. Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now? Is that better? I thought you were going to put it on me. So okay, I'm just going to, by way of introduction to Alessandro's keynote speech, I just had a few notes on the new European Bauhaus. So the new European Bauhaus was launched last year, just over 100 years after the launch of the original Bauhaus movement. So now, when we decide to reuse the name of a world-renowned artistic and cultural movement, we leave ourselves open to be judged against the success of the first movement. So it kind of makes me think of like Hollywood remakes, film remakes of classic films in Hollywood that were already good in the first place. Why do we need a remake 50 years later? But it's not just the authenticity and credibility of the original artistic movement that's at stake. The new European Bauhaus has set out bold ambitions to open up the causal relationships between disparate disciplines to explore greener, more circular economic opportunity. Pointing out these causal links admits openly that the stuff that we make impacts our habitat in ways that have significant consequences for our planet. Therefore, to succeed, the new European Bauhaus cannot be mere policy tangential think tank on the fringes of the European Green Deal, full of lofty theoretical discourse. At worst, it could be a PR smokescreen for inaction. In order to be successful, it must deliver in terms of steering a culture of change in the way that we think about design, manufacturing, building, consumption, and what constitutes scientific progress and how this impacts on sustainability. We in the SoPHIA project are invested in the success of the new Bauhaus. I know that our hosts and lead partner in the SoPHIA project, Roma Tre, and our Greek partner, NTOA, and my own Irish institute, IDT, it's not my institute, I just work there, are all signed up as partners of the initiative and are fully behind it. There are many ways that the knowledge and expertise we have developed in the SoPHIA project can be of benefit to the new European Bauhaus. The SoPHIA project has developed a model of impact assessment that takes a holistic approach. We've always maintained the importance of a people-centered approach. We recognize the need for a focus on impacts over time to reflect sustainable development goals, and we recognize that impacts can no longer be measured narrowly from within siloed established disciplines. In response, we have developed a multi-domain approach. We hope that you can see from within the new European Bauhaus movement that that we have shared values across our initiatives, and we hope that you will draw on our expertise and knowledge, and our door is open for any future collaborations. So I'm just going to hand over to our keynote speaker, who is going to deliver from online, which hopefully, fingers crossed, will work with the audio setup. So our keynote speaker for this session is Alessandro Rancati. Alessandro is an architect and designer. He works in the European Commission's Joint Research Centre, and he's a senior practitioner of design management, design direction, service design, design thinking, and context mapping. And he's a policy analyst also, for good measure. Alessandro will speak about the new European Bauhaus and the possible new scenarios for cultural heritage that arise from this new initiative. So hopefully there'll be I'm sure there'll be plenty of questions from the room, and hopefully our audio setup will allow for those questions to be heard. And I'm just going to hand over to Alessandro, hopefully.
Yes.
Technically, what do I have to do for that?
Is that, am I online? Do you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear.
There you go. Perfect. Okay. Thanks a lot, Parek. I will start with a very, very brief introduction that makes maybe even a link or not with the old Bauhaus, the real one, and then explain a little bit where we are now, and the links between the European Bauhaus and heritage. I would say that the major link between the European Bauhaus and the historical Bauhaus is in, let's say, the way we look at things. If we think of the traditional Bauhaus, that movement or that experience set, in a certain sense, the base for what became afterwards our cultural practice related to objects, related to spaces, related to some forms of the more, let's say, practical arts, crafts, and so on. in a certain sense created disciplines that didn't exist, and it did so by somehow forgetting about the theories and the maybe even the codified knowledge, and by focusing on let's say one pretext, which is in that case was the building, no, to bring everything together in a very practical way, so that the questions and the conversation were really focused and also tangible at the same time. And I think that this is reflected a bit in the intentions that accompany the European Bauhaus from the beginning, when our president said we would like this initiative to become, let's say, a way to make the Green Deal tangible, practical, something that we can experience. What we inherit from design practices is this idea that we are perfectly fine with uncertainty. We're perfectly fine also with working with very open concepts without a predefined or preset answer, and just by even allowing a bit of time to the observation. And so that's why we started the initiative, and the first part was dedicated to observing or to listening to what people would recognize as beautiful, sustainable, and inclusive. So the idea was not to prescribe or to define what beautiful, sustainable, and together means, but to ask people, what do you recognize in your own experience and in your own places that is beautiful, sustainable, and inclusive? In this way, I would say that the European Bauhaus is actually a sort of recognition that the initiative is already out there, and that sometimes there's not even anything to invent, or in any case that what we invent should and could be linked and anchored not only to the new ideas, but also and especially to what we already have around us. And in the case of heritage, to link the new future to what was future in the past. No? And so that moment allowed, on one side, to keep the initiative open, and at the same time to collect a lot of different examples that are already existing in our cities and in our places across Europe. And it also allowed us to start this first series of prizes that are, again, an example that beautiful, sustainable, and inclusive can be declined in very different ways. It's not just about spaces, it's not just about buildings, it's not just about materials, it's also about relationships and methods to live together. So it really becomes, the initiative is really bringing together a lot of different variables or dimensions of our being together, situated in a place. And so now at this point we have a communication of the European Commission on the European Bauhaus, which is essentially a policy document that opens and starts to shape really what the European Bauhaus means and how we would like to let's say continue in the next years to bring on one side an expanding community together, and also to work really closely with our other colleagues from different directorates into aligning the policies that are relevant with the principle of the European Bauhaus. So we're talking about, again, a beautiful, sustainable, and inclusive. We are now in the delivery phase. Part of the delivery phase is to create a community, or to let's say, empower and expand the community that already exists, that is mostly built around our partners, which you are one of, and to make sure that, that all the different initiatives and ideas that in a certain sense populate this community start to create system or ecosystems, no? And so that any action or any initiative is not just something that pops up in a place and ends there, but it becomes sort of a seed that can travel across Europe and maybe create or replicate in different locations, in different parts. We will open very soon the community to also political entities, public authorities, and commercial entities, so businesses. Because at the moment, we only had partners. We were only admitting non-for-profit and associations to be a partner. But now it's really starting to open, and the idea is essentially to really try to understand how to create places that are beautiful, sustainable, and inclusive. And in this, the role of heritage is potentially huge. Because on one side, we're talking about diversity and inclusion. And I would say that, heritage is a clear manifestation of diversity and the ability to include and bring heritage into our thinking and into our practices is a way to maintain and to promote diversity.
It's just blah blah stuff.
I see. Comments. Okay. There is also, in terms of heritage, a link that would be important to make, because one of the other aspects related to the European Bauhaus is the concept of innovation. And we know that as soon as we talk about innovation, some lights start to pop up, and usually it's about technology. It's about the digital space, and it's about the future. And the idea of innovation, and it's starting to emerge from the examples that we've started to see, and from what you have shared, is that innovation is in general something new within a context. So not new as an absolute value, but new in a context. And that means that all the practices of the past in our context can be even considered as something new. It was forgotten, maybe it was left on the side. And I remember one of my experiences in when I was living in Barcelona. There was one of the design schools over there that, because of being public, didn't have access to a certain typologies of tools and machinery and so on. And so they specialized really on the traditional crafts. And turned out that after some years, those traditional crafts were they were the only place where those traditional crafts were still alive. So they were the only place where you could do certain things, certain forms of jewelry, certain forms of work with wood, with glass, etc. No? And so the idea is rediscovering their local cultures and bringing the local cultures in a system is what can bring a lot of value to the European Bauhaus, which also means it can give you a lot of value to places that are not necessarily associated to heritage. And so I would really recommend also to thinking of heritage in terms of something that we can add to the places that that are not considered as a cultural heritage. Last dimension, obviously, is the dimension of learning. One of the activities that our team is working on is places of learning. The approach is, again, open. So we're not talking about specific kinds of learning. We're not talking about only universities or early learning, but the idea is to understand that we as persons are constantly learning, and our places impact the way we learn and the way we, in a certain sense, teach. Also can impact the places that we inhabit. So the idea is to really open the thinking about learning, and obviously heritage has a huge opportunity in this case also to redefine how we experience the places and the key that we experience these places in. So I would say that heritage often is very closely associated to tourism. We know, for example, that tourism also needs to have or to rethink to its own role, and the link between tourism and heritage and learning and local cultures is something that can really create a very powerful synergy. And I would just conclude maybe by mentioning that if we look at heritage in a forward-looking perspective, we may be thinking now that we are working on the heritage of our children, and so maybe our sense of responsibility of what we leave behind could be one of the maybe triggers to maybe speak less and act more, no? And so also in the spirit of the New European Bauhaus, just work on tangible examples, work on tangible experiments, try to put the experiments and the examples in a system and working together. And by doing this, we can start creating essentially a form of heritage that will be appreciated in the future instead of being, let's say, seen as a bad legacy of a bad period. So let's work on this together. If you're interested in joining, in January we will open the call for, again, partners and friends of the New European Bauhaus, and so there is a role for almost any actor, from cities to organizations to companies to anyone, essentially, even at the level of the individual. So keep your eyes open, and I really hope to see you and see the examples that come out of your work. And I'm very interested also in understanding how your essentially framework for self-evaluation or for evaluation can nourish the thinking on the self-evaluation on the New European Bauhaus. So what it means to create beautiful, sustainable, and inclusive places.
Thank you very much, Alessandro, for that very interesting insights into the new Bauhaus and the current state of affairs within that. But I'd like to open to the floor for any questions that people might have or comments, if anyone was interested, and hopefully the mics work. Okay.
Just to say that I want to thank you, Alessandro and Paola De Marchini. Hi, Alessandro. Nice to see you at the end. I think that as SoPHIA Consortium, we have a lot of point of interest in common. And my question is related to a specific aspect, that is the SoPHIA holistic impact assessment model. And thinking about your discourse and precisely talking about the open method you followed with the European Bauhaus, which is a kind of building process with no boundary, and the aim is to create a kind of network with interested persons and organizations, and also it's very interesting the fact that you, of course, you have guiding principle, that is to say, beautiful, sustainable, and inclusive way to live together. My question is how you measure the goal that you achieve as a policy analyst, and in the case of the European Bauhaus as a developer of the movement, of the network, and also if you have specific impact assessment tools or goal to achieve, or if this aspect is still not yet defined at the European level Commission. It's something that should be defined further. Everybody knows that the European Bauhaus has already launched new funding calls, very interesting. And therefore, the second question is, considering the calls, do you have, as a designer of the call, specific monitoring systems, considering, of course, the expected goals, but even more the expected impacts, which is the new keywords? So it's okay?
Okay. Super.
I don't want to talk anymore and leave the floor to you. I'm very happy to see you, all the others.
Super. Thank you very much. So I noted the two questions. So about the framework for evaluation, or maybe even before I answer the two questions, I need to clarify some things of how the Commission works and how the European Bauhaus is structured. The European Bauhaus is let's say, under the responsibility or the coordination of the JRC, which is a joint research center, and it's a directorate of the Commission, so it's a department, and it's one of the few departments that don't have a policy mandate. So we don't develop the calls. The calls are developed by the policy DGs, and so we don't manage funds. And it's one of the characteristics and peculiarity of the European Bauhaus, because this allows us, in a certain sense, allows the initiative to be really transversal, and so to tap into different directorates and bring their work together or coordinate. So this is a bit what is happening. And so we don't design the calls. The calls are designed by our colleagues, and we don't design the evaluation frameworks for the calls, because again, it's not the responsibility of the European Bauhaus. What we do is to more and more make sure, and this especially also with the help of the community and the help of partners and so on, is to make sure that the calls are being gradually designed in a way that is more and more compatible and attuned to the principles of the European Bauhaus and to what we start to see emerging from the European Bauhaus. So there is a normal moment now of, let's say, even learning, because the initiative in reality started without a portfolio of its own, and with some of the calls even already, in a certain sense, designed and prepared. And so what we can expect is a gradual improvement of the calls with time. This is valid, for example, for the prizes. The prizes we helped coordinate to create, let's say, the conceptual framework, the categories, and so on. But then there is a directorate. In that case, it was DG Regio, who was put the money for the instruments and put the legal basis for people to be able to apply, to receive the funds, etc., etc. So I think it's good if this is clarified so that it also shows a bit the level of complexity of the initiative. So this said, there is, in any case, an overarching question, which is how do we recognize what is European Bauhaus and what it's not? And so this is a work that some of our colleagues are working, in this case, from the team, on this idea of creating a label or creating seals of excellence, and also in the future a stronger reflection on a self-assessment tool will be made. And at the moment, the reflections are open, and so that's why I think it's very important that you, as partners, bring up this knowledge within the community and flag it, because the community is not only a place where partners or friends meet, but it's also an opportunity for us to bring in our colleagues and let them know what is happening and create the connections over there. So all the work that you've done, I would really recommend you to at least put it in our shared platform, and then work together with other partners to create, let's say, a sort of momentum so that this conversation can be improved and extended. And so I think that, yeah, I also answered a bit the second part, which is, you know, if we have a monitoring system for the calls, the monitoring systems are embedded and designed when the calls are created. What we need, in a certain sense, is monitoring methods and maybe experiments on how to monitor in a way that it goes beyond the calls. And so that's why we are creating this European Bauhaus Lab that has no financial support. It has a series of rules that we've been working together with the rest of the partners, but it's a place where we can experiment and we can bring forward examples of good practices that can be then translated or can be reapplied or reused in different contexts and in different parts of Europe. And so one of the ideas that the lab will work around activities that are let's say, promoted and self-organized by the community. So a group of partners can decide to come together and work on an activity. But each one of the activities that will start will somehow need to have a monitoring framework. I mean, we would like to have each activity as an opportunity for all the rest of the community to learn what happened over there. And you cannot, you know, learn from others if there's no moment of exchange, if there's not monitoring what is happening. And it's more monitoring in terms of learning than monitoring in terms of checking if things are done, right? And so that's a bit the idea of also, and the spirit of how the lab could work. And I would say it's also a lot in your hands. We're just our role in this case. It's a bit again unexpected, maybe for sure not standard, because our role as Commission is more to really facilitate and make things happen and create connections rather than say this is what should be done and this what should not be done. Right. So it's. There's a bit of also experimentation with new forms of interaction and new roles.
Thank you, Alessandro. One more question from Riva Lava, or a series of questions, I'm not sure.
No questions. But I knew European Bauhaus as we worked it.
I'm just going to swap seats though, so you can be heard on the mic.
Okay, that's right. That's what I wanted to do. Anyway, we were discussing the European Bauhaus amongst us in today's meeting. So we were asked to present, say a couple of words about our school's participation, because the National Technical University of Athens has been very active in this. Of course, we're a school of architecture. I mean, we feel like we're of the first people called into this endeavor. And I would like quickly to tell you a couple of things about it. The New European Bauhaus, you could look us up on the internet. It's the NEB Goes South. It doesn't literally go south. We didn't spoil the Bauhaus. But it was very interesting to engage in this dialogue with all the ideas of the original Weimar Bauhaus as schools of architecture 100 years later, and as schools of the South, because we share a different heritage, we share a different climate zone, which makes things very different with building and with landscape and with heritage, of course. So the New European Bauhaus Goes South, which is ongoing, it's ongoing until at least the end of February, is being coordinated by the School of Architecture in Porto, in Portugal. And already we had the first 5 meetings. We had the kickoff, and then we started in Athens with the topic Designing with the Landscape. We were very honored, and I am mentioning this not to impress you, but we were very honored and surprised that the President of the Greek Republic said yes, and she gave welcome words to our little presentation. And this is a sign, actually, how important it is, you know, in the international agenda, in the political agenda, to speak about the environment and to encourage young people to get involved. And this is what she did. Everything is on the internet. You can see all speeches, everything, you know. New European Bauhaus Goes South. And amongst many things discussed in Athens, this was in July, I thought it was very interesting that we concluded that finally, you know, 100 years after the Bauhaus, and as architects, we have to realize that humans are not the only alive people on Earth. We are not the only inhabitants of the habitat, which is a totally different and new perspective to what we do. After that, in September, Porto took over, and there was a question of housing. And again, there was a very extended, comprehensive discussion on the dignity of living, of having the right to a house, of having the right to quality architecture for everybody. And you know that this is also a position, a thesis by Alvaro Siza, who represents that school. But there was a very extended discussion and exchange again on that topic. I forgot to tell you the 6 schools, which I should have said, is Porto who coordinates it. And then we go from west to east. It's Valencia, it's Toulouse in France, then it's Bologna, Cesena in Italy here, and then Zagreb, and then Athens. So you have this arch, this overarching, you know. And the discussion was exactly on the dignity of having a house to live in, you know, which was public housing or social housing. And we were surprised to find a huge difference between countries. Portugal, much more developed, Greece, much less, you know, and goes on and on. But this is a very ongoing issue, which has a lot of political aspects as well, if you think about it. The next discussion was in Zagreb with the title Framing Collectivity. This is the aspect of inclusion of the New European Bauhaus, but also with all its variants in education. Then we had Bologna and Cesena on the meutics of the city. It's the term Socrates used, the meutics, how you give birth to meaning, actually. And as Italians, as you know, and I'm in Italy right now, there was a lot of the talk about the city, the porosity of the city, the project Roma Interrotta, this whole idea that it's not just the built environment, it's really society and urban life that shape the future and shape everything we have as environment. And the very last one we just attended like 2 days ago was Kilometer Zero Architecture, organized by Valencia. And this was also a meeting where all the 6 universities and all our participants, of course, discussed sustainable architecture, but very much also in the way we just heard before, by Erminia, by employing simple ways of building, of living, of existing in an area, in a climate zone where you can actually live like the 9 out of the 12 months, more or less, outside. This is very important and very different from the Gropius Bauhaus. Just a small note here. The next one to come is end of January with Toulouse, Geo-Biosource Architecture. And then we'll hold the workshops for students in February. All the schools together to apply and test all this on a level of education and university. This is more or less my report. I would like to say that it is this experiment we are making here brought a lot of this Bauhaus of the South on the same page. We didn't know about each other. We didn't know about each other, these countries. We're more like dominated by the North, which we were referring to, and we realized there's a whole zone of other characteristics that works in different ways. And this was very, very interesting. And the last thing to mention, the language. We all realized that all we people of the South, we do not necessarily speak English. We had a lot of Spanish or Portuguese architects or Italian architects who didn't want to speak in English. They didn't speak. They didn't hold keynote speeches. And this is not funny. It's interesting to think about. I mean that. So we are thinking now whether we can allocate money and have translation, like we are thinking also in SoPHIA, because a lot of its cultural value of this new European Bauhaus Go South zone also lays and is embedded in its language, in its expression, So anyway, for now, we have all said, the 6 schools, that we will be okay if we just use bad English. This is the language we will speak, bad English. But for now, we hope to find a way to give more expression and more room to our own cultures, And I think language has everything to do with it, being Greek. So this is my small report. Please look us up. I think a lot is relevant to what we discussed. And also Marianthi, who is with me, has been in there from the beginning of this project, because we invite a lot of young people, young architect students, to do roundtables and breakout rooms and bring in fresh blood and fresh ideas. That's that. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Riva. And I don't know if Alessandro wants to respond to any of that. I guess it's a good example of the new Bauhaus movement in action. They're bringing some of the principles you were talking about into action on the ground. So I don't know if you wanted to have a closing statement, because we're getting close to the end of our session. Alessandro, I wanted to leave you one of the last words.
Okay, just to maybe a note to conclude is tomorrow we have the first, let's say, session with our partners where we show some of the examples of activities that just started by themselves without waiting for any calls or for anything else. And actually, Bauhaus Go South is one of them. And so what I would recommend is just to get in touch with them, maybe learn a bit what's happening, and maybe think of how to expand on what is being done. Because yes, as commission and as institutions, we can give a push, but then things happen and should probably happen beyond what we can do. And so we're successful is really if things start to happen independently. Yes, to conclude, maybe, really very interested in hoping to learn more about the framework that you have set up, and really hopefully able to see references in our platform for partners, so that we can continue the conversation further.
Thank you very much, Alessandro. So I'd like to bring to close the second session today. And thank Alessandro very much for his participation and his information about the new Bauhaus movement. But yeah, I'd like to thank our audience for making such an effort to come here as well and participate. Just wanted to finish with one quote from Walter Gropius, going back to the original Bauhaus movement, who's talked about the greatest responsibility of the planner and architect, I believe, is the protection and development of our habitat, which was referred to by Riva earlier on. And I think earlier by Nicholas also in the previous session. Man has evolved a mutual relationship with nature on Earth, but his power to change its surface has grown so tremendously that this may become a curse instead of a blessing. So I think we've kind of moved well beyond that point and into the point that we need to take action, and the new Bauhaus seems to take some steps towards that. We've yet to see how far its reach can have. So thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you very much for these two sessions. Very, very interesting, and we have the curiosity to deepen the possibility to have a dialogue with the new European Bauhaus. Very, very interesting. And as Paola said previously, I have the feeling that there is some similar vision in the openness, in the dialogue between many disciplines, in the necessity, in the need to integrate and to have a strict integration between also between different sort of sustainability. And we thank very, very much Alessandro. Of course, we send our member Erminia, and also the speech of our moderator Nichols and Parek. And now we are going to conclude this session, and I ask to Giovanni, I don't see, to Giovanni Caudo for his conclusion. Thank you, Giovanni.
In this case, in my mind, transition is not just the middle from A to B. No, it's not just a position in the middle from A to B, but it's a particular condition where everything works together, where building, but also the flora, also the animals, any form of life staying very strictly with this description. Because the transition is not just a middle point from A to B, but is a particular condition where we live, not just humanity, but also in general the animals, the life stay inside this particular condition. Well, in the SoPHIA scheme, I look at this ambition to describe not just the context, not just the human context, not just the built, not just the building, but also a different aspect, not just the social, but very complex, very large, very complex for in many aspects to include this activity to making heritage. In very short way, heritage in action and transition is the two words I can use for this very short presentation. Means, first, the focus is on the people, but inside this position there is also different issues. How to use resource, how to protect it, how to make an environment characterized from inclusive and social cohesion, how to manage the memory and identity, how to make innovation, how to make work and prosperity. In this, from this point of view, making heritage is a very complex activity, not just for one person or for one discipline. This is a very large territory with a lot of discipline to work together and probably this change really the world. Also, the environmental aspect we discussed before, contributions, work for characterizing this dynamic, this heritage, this activity. Finally, in my point of view, heritage making is a different way to describe the reinvent of the world. It's not very ambitious, this word, this expression. This is a very the main, probably also the more complex activity we stay in front of us, because if really the issues is that the world it's not possible to make a new world, but also to change the world where we live. Reinvent this condition is the main way we have in front of us. And heritage making is in a simple way, but not very simple to produce. Is a different way to describe this possibility to reinvent the world. It's the same when we try to writing a test. Before writing a test, and then in another time, you can rewrite the same test. So you try to rewriting the new sense of this test. Maybe this is a metaphor, of course, but it's a very clearly for us. In the project SoPHIA, this aspect for me is expressed in this sentence, where in the summary of the project SoPHIA reported this sentence. The project SoPHIA aims to ensuring this intervention in cultural heritage have positive impact on all dimensions of the society, in line with the crucial switch from a logic of spending to one of impact, gave evidence to the proposed by the European Commission. SoPHIA moved by presenting an innovative approach. If you move just the logic of spending in the one of impact, and the impact is the complex of the scenario I can try to describe, and the scenario is the main focus of this scenario is reinventing the world where we live. The impact is more clearly, or the impact we try to measure, we try to evaluate is more clearly. Then, finally, another important issues to working in heritage making and in reinvent the world is to stay in front of the world around the house, the world built, but to open your eyes in a very different way. This is a very probably the main difficulty we try to work, because there is linked with the imagination. how to imagine a new world completely different of the world we stay around us. This is the condition of the contemporaneity, no? As for me, it's not an remissive situation. If we world with if we working with the world where we stay around us, it's not just a remissive or una submissive or renunciatory condition, because this is the main not very simple work to change the world stay inside where we live. Probably it's more simple to build a new building or to build the new, but to change the exist is more complex, but this is the aim we stay in front of you. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Giovanni, because you open a new perspective, a very interesting perspective in this session, and introducing this new perspective, you have combined many of the things that we have discussed today. The topic of the city as a space that can be redesigned, rethink in as a form of a new life of way, and the role of heritage in this rethinking. And thank you very much, because the link to SoPHIA is a very interesting one, because combining the perspective of open heritage and heritage making with our model, and that again is an open model that include many perspectives, could help us to deepen this possibility of dialogue with different kind of project. And thank you very much for this opportunity and of this intervention. So we have concluded our first day. I think that we have to thank all of the intervention, and now, of course, as Flavia said, we are going to our first social event. Please, Flavia, help me, because I don't know what we have to do.
Hello, thank you very much again for your contribution to the first day of the conference. As anticipated at the beginning of our session today, there's going to be a transfer from our department to the restaurant. So if you want to gather all your things, we can go downstairs together. I just kindly ask you to fill the form, the two forms that you found in the little blue agenda that we gave it to you, and please leave it here so that I can give it to the administrative officer to just track your presence here during the first day. Thank you very much, you all.
Thank you very much.